All right, we're back at it. The objective of this episode is to get the wheelhouse installed. We'll have some minor fab work right in along here where I had to cut the trunk floor pan in order to get the wheelhouse to fit properly. Once we get the wheelhouse screwed into place with sheet metal screws and we have it in place, we'll come along and tack our edges back in so that everything is fitting nicely, and then hopefully we can get the wheelhouse welded into place. Fingers crossed. Alright, so real quick, an overview for anybody that's wondering how the wheelhouse from CJ Pony Parts is fitting. This is the entire complete wheelhouse, and overall, I mean, it fits pretty good. Now keep in mind I had T-bone damage, which I'll show you what I had to modify there, but this structure here is kind of bent in. But as far as how the wheelhouse fits, the full replacement quarter panel I bought from CJ Pony Parts, it fits almost perfect. The only real issues I ran into with this wheelhouse is I had to do a little pie cut right down in here, kind of a relief cut. And all I really did was kind of cut a little triangle out of there to allow this piece to kind of come in and move around a little bit. And I'm going to come back and tack all that. But I had to make that modification. And really the only other thing I'll point out is this is also an aftermarket trunk floor pan, obviously from CJ Pony Parts. And there's a hole here, and I forget who it was, but someone pointed out to me that this hole I don't think was there for the 65 and 66s. It was for the 67 through 68. But I have this running into here. I'm not gonna worry about this. My main concern is how this wheelhouse fits the quarter panel. Now up in here is where I had to make some weird modifications. It's not even really a modification. I just have, from the factory, this seam rides in this gap on this side. But because of the T-bone damage and the way things worked out, I'm choosing to let it ride on the outside. Now on the passenger side, it actually happens to ride on the outside. I don't know why they do that with these cars, but the driver's side should be in here. But what I'm gonna do is get it welded into place everywhere and then come back and pinch these together and weld that. Now when you install your wheelhouse, you may have a pretty big gap right down in here where the wheelhouse meets the floor pan. And what you need to keep in mind is that this has a lot of flex to it. So don't forget to go along on the outside, and I'll show you what I did, and pinch those together with clamps, and that will really bring this together. I think without the clamp there's about a 1/2 inch to a 3/4 inch gap. But that wheelhouse flexes in. So right here on the lower corner, I have this clamp holding this into place, and I'm gonna come along and put some sheet metal screws in here to bring it all together. And then I'll come through and I'll start welding my spot welds, and as I weld some of those in, I'll start taking out the sheet metal screws and welding over those. That's the plan anyway. I think it'll come together. And then as far as my damage up here, again, I'm gonna get as much of this welded in as I can, and then I'm going to form this to the wheelhouse and weld it in. And be happy with it, and be happy that nobody's ever gonna see it. As long as I have the car anyway, so should be good. Alright, so here's how everything is fitting with the quarter on now. A few problem areas. There's a little bit of a gap here between the deck lid and the quarter panel. Now I know the quarter panel in this area has to come up a little bit. Well, if you look, yeah, I mean the whole deck lid is sitting high, so that's got to come down. And there's still some work to be done up in this area. This is going to be pushed in. I know that I have to work on this alignment. But as far as the wheelhouse goes, like I said, everything's pretty much dead on. These holes line up. This stuff will be, these flanges will be very easily pinched together and welded in. The only area that's really an issue, you can see these holes line up pretty good, is right in here. There's gapping. And like I said, I know that the quarter panel has to come up a little bit, but I'm not gonna worry about this. Again, if I get this all fitting pretty good, this is an area where I'll either maybe try to dolly this together, or I'll just fabricate a piece to go in there, or maybe I'll cut that section of the wheelhouse out and drop it down. Not sure how I'd handle it. Again, this is my first project car, so I'm probably going to go the easier way, where it's an area that if it's not really going to be noticed too much, then I'm probably going to take the easier route just so I don't get in over my head. Anyway, knowing that the alignment now works with all these panels that I've been working on for the last couple months, I can go ahead and screw in the wheelhouse. Alright, so the wheelhouse is now screwed into place with sheet metal screws. It's very secure, so at this point I can take off the quarter panel and we will leave the wheelhouse in and address the area back there by the driver's side trunk floor pan. And we'll also take a look at how we're going to deal with this bracing behind here. Alright guys, I have this section tacked in and we have all this bent down and touching the wheelhouse, so we are pretty much ready to go. At this point I can pull my sheet metal screws, we can drop out the wheelhouse, drill all of our holes for our spot welds, prep everything with weld through primer, and we can finish up welding this, grind it smooth, and we should be good to go. Here's how my flange turned out, and that's pretty darn good. Obviously there's a little bit of, it's not pitting, it's just kind of built up from the weld, but this is going to get covered with seam sealer anyway, so I'm not concerned about that. For the most part it turned out really good, and the wheelhouse will fit right in there, and that'll give me a good flange to weld to. Everything's covered, all the surfaces are prepped with weld through primer. The wheelhouse section of this thing is almost wrapped up. We are almost there. Things are really starting to move along. We will be welding it in the next episode. I wish I could have gotten to it this episode, but I don't want to rush it. I want to fit it on a few more times, make sure all my spot welds are lined up properly, get my metal bared where it needs to be bared, and everything is good to go, and we have a nice, flawless welding in action, we'll say. Weld in action. And then even in the next episode, we might be getting a very good idea of how this quarter panel is going to be fitting and getting welded in. So, got some good stuff coming down the pipeline. As always, I appreciate you guys. You guys are awesome. And until the next episode, stay driven.